Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. It is Feedback Friday. Another day for us to pause and reflect on the beauty that is feedback. Thank you all so much for joining me this evening. To those of you who I'm meeting for the very first time, my name is Dr. Shanita Williams, and I consider myself a feedback enthusiast because I believe that if we are truly able to leverage feedback, we have the keys to unlocking and unleashing our full potential. So the purpose of our time together really is to just pause and share a tip. So one of the things I want to share with you guys this evening is something about a self-check. I think we are so busy in the world. We're almost on autopilot. I don't know about you, but 2020 is flying by. I cannot believe the holidays are around the corner. And so sometimes it's important to pause and check in with ourselves before we move on to the next activity. But it's really rare that we have the opportunities to do that, right? I mean, we are so incredibly busy. But when it comes to feedback, that pause and that intentional freeze is so important when it comes to checking in with ourselves before we engage in a conversation with someone else. So I see a lot of awesome people on here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to talk about our intentions and doing a self-check first. So I'm going to give you 4 quick tips on kind of things you want to check in with first before you move into that feedback conversation. When you think about feedback, and every time I reflect on when I get feedback, one of the first things I'm thinking about is, what was the motive? So we're going to lean into that during our time together. So the first thing I want you to do is pause, check in with yourself, and really reflect on your mind. So I want you to do a mental check before you even think about giving someone feedback. So what is that all about? Well, it's really about you pausing and really understanding the context for yourself of the feedback. Sometimes we have this knee-jerk reaction to responding to situations, but you want to pause first and fully understand the context, the content that you actually want to share with this person. So some questions to ask yourself to do that self-check with our mind is first, what is the feedback? How many times have you been in a situation where someone started talking to you and you're trying to sift through, like, what are we talking about? Is there a message here for me? And you have to kind of decode it. You don't want that to happen in your feedback situation. So get really clear about what the context is, what the actual feedback is that you want to share, and you really want to know why. What is the impact? Get really, really clear mentally. If you are sifting through your mind and you realize that you don't have this clarity, then your intentions are not going to come through very clear. So you want to make sure that you really pause, check the context, and make sure that you understand why is this feedback important to share. You also want to really want to lean into what are the facts. Sometimes when we have these experiences with feedback or situations where we feel like we need to share a perspective with someone, it can come off as extremely emotional. And you want to make sure, and emotions are important, you want to have that there, but you want to sift through that for a moment and get really clear about the facts. What is the situation? What just occurred? And what is the impact? The more you're able to do that work, your intentions in that feedback session is going to come out very clear. So first step, you want to check your mind. The second thing you want to check is your heart. You really want to lean into really getting clear about what am I feeling, right? Before we were talking about what is the facts, what happened mentally, but emotionally we want to lean into how do you feel? And this is important because feelings are an important part of the human experience. But you want to lean into and really understand for yourself, is this what's in your heart right now? Is this about you or is it about them? Oftentimes, I believe that when something happens in our lives and we go to give feedback to someone, oftentimes it's not necessarily about them. Sometimes it's about us. So you want to get really, really clear, and it's okay that it's about you, right? But you want to get clear about your motive. Are you giving this feedback to someone from a feeling in your heart that you were offended and you just want to maybe put someone in their place or get it off your chest? While that's important, when you're trying to deliver feedback, it's hard to hear that when it sounds like the feedback coming from your heart is really about breaking them down or putting them in their place. So you want to pause before you give that feedback and think, what is my motive? Is this for me or is it for them? The more it is for them and their development and their growth, the easier that conversation will be. So we're going to check our mind, we're going to check our heart, and next we're going to check our mouths. Yes. You ever heard the adage, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me? That's actually not true. I don't know about you, but there are plenty of times where I got kicked some verbal judo and it hurt, okay? And studies have shown that the side of the brain that gets activated when you experience physical pain also lights up when you experience emotional pain like rejection. So our words are powerful. So we want to be very, very intentional about them, especially when we're trying to give feedback that comes from the heart, when it's about helping people get better. So you want to pause and think about, what are you going to say? Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, hey, I'm good off the cuff. I can freestyle this. Have you ever said something and it kind of came out and you were like, I wish I didn't say that, or that's not what I meant. And we find ourselves in situations where we're apologizing over and over and over again. Sometimes it's simply because we didn't pause and check our mouths and speak with intentionality and really cultivate the words that are going to express what it is we want them to hear. Now, don't get this confused with scripting yourself. You don't want to have a script. It should be genuine. It should be from your heart. It should be authentic. So don't sit there and feel like you're reading off a script or a teleprompter. You want to make sure that it is coming from your heart, but you are being very thoughtful about how those words land. So we're going to check our mind. We're going to check our hearts. We're going to check our words out of our mouths. And last thing I want us to check before we go into a feedback conversation, what do you think that is? The last thing we should check. I think we should check our eyes. They say that our eyes are the windows to our souls. And so for me, it's important to be aware that you don't see people as they are, but you see them as you see yourself, right? So it is important that you pause and really think about, what is it that I actually see? When I look at this person across from me, do I see someone with potential? Do I see someone who's going to listen? Do I see someone who is open to change or willing to hear my point of view? If you are going into a feedback session and you've already convinced yourself of what you see and it's not favorable, if you go into the conversation and you're saying, this person is a monster, this person isn't going to hear my point of view, it's going to, when you start giving your feedback, that intention is going to come through. What you see in your mind is going to come through in that conversation. And it actually won't set you up for success because you've already kind of have a feeling and a sentiment that is going to show up. So whatever you think in your mind is actually going to come out of your mouth, and people will feel and understand how you perceive them. So pause for a moment and think about, when I see this person that I'm going to give this feedback to, what do I see? And if you do that and are able to find the good in this person, be able to see the potential in the person, you set yourself up to have a much better situation. You also want to pause and think about what you don't see, right? What are some of the maybe facts or things that I did see in front of me, but what are the things I did not see that could be influencing the situation? It puts you in a much better space to say, I'm open to possibilities. Remember, ontological humility is a huge part of this. Being humble and understanding that I don't have full ownership and the only point of view that is the truth, that there are multiple alternatives to this conversation. If you keep that in mind when you enter your feedback conversations, you set yourself up to really have a really great outcome. So those are my tips for today. Before you go into your feedback conversation, check your mind. Get very clear about what it is that you want to say. What is the feedback? What is the impact? What is it? What is the context? You want to check your heart. All right, is this about me or is this about them? The more you make it about them, the better it'll be. You also want to make sure you check our mouths. We really want to make sure we're intentional about our speech. Words have power. Speak life on people. And then the last, we want to check our eyes. Pause and think about what we see in front of us. Everybody has greatness in them. There is a little bit of smidgen there. And if you can find that before you have that conversation, you're going to set yourself up for success. So thank you so much for joining me tonight for our Feedback Friday. Join me next week as we talk about the spirit of Thanksgiving and just giving thanks in general. So have a good evening and a wonderful weekend. Take care.